Hey everyone! So if you click on this video, chances are you're a Pokéfan who has seen the trailer for the upcoming Pokémon Winds and Waves, and is probably feeling a bit of the information drought right now. Well, I'm usually not that concerned about that. As you can see, I'm not a PokéTuber or anything. I usually just play other games until the game drops. But this time it's different. Because you see, I'm not just a Pokéfan, I'm also Indonesian. So when I saw the leaked map of the region looks like this, of course I can't help but be intrigued. Pokemon Senpai is noticing my kid to a neck of the wood? That can't be. It's Greece, right? This map is like if someone took the Kyklades and randomly stuck Indonesian islands on it. Maybe they did plan for Greece at first before changing their mind? But of course, the trailer dropped and it's pretty clear which part of the world we're in. All these elements are giving general Southeast Asia vibe, and maybe just generic tropical vibe overall. But as an Indonesian, there are specific things here that caught my eye. Like these houses far in the background that no one really talked much about. Because this looks like a style of roof specific to Java, Indonesia, called a joglo. It doesn't seem like the more common gabled roof you may find anywhere else. It's meant to resemble a mountain, which would fit nicely to how prevalent volcano seems to be in this region as well. And then under the starter's name, there's this ornamentation that looks too intentional. So the shape is kind of like this, right? Now again, I can tell you what this reminds me of. The native Javanese script. In fact, if you flip this around, you get this exact letter. Does it mean anything? Probably not. Pokemon doesn't really use real-world script anymore, but it's not far-fetched to think they got inspired by it. Because of course, Pokemon has been increasingly referencing more and more of its region's real-world inspirations. And as much as we like to meme on these games, you can't deny this excitement from people who are seeing Pokemon's take on their country. So regardless of how good technically this game's gonna be, I wonder how much of that I would feel. Because this is the first time they're using a lesser known part of the world. A third world country where most of the people probably don't know much about Pokemon. So, will we continue to see this faithful representation that appeals to the locals? Or will it just be a whatever vacation playground that's good enough for the rest of the world? Well, so, as someone from the area who will be playing this game, and is also an enjoyer of long-winded Pokemon theory content, I thought maybe I'll also contribute my voice, my analysis and expectation on this region based on its real-world counterparts that I'm more familiar of. This is by no means a prediction or demand like, we have to have this, considering the game's already pretty much done anyways. Think of it as more to help familiarize people to this part of the world, so maybe you can recognize things if Game Freak decided to put any of this in the game. Because as much as I have issues with this country, I love its culture and I do care about its representation in international media. I mean, just look at my Animal Crossing island. Now, we already have so many speculations on the starters, their evolution, inspiration, potential secondary type. So I won't add too much to this. I'm Team Bonbon by the way. I also won't speculate much on new Pokemon, evolution, gimmick, legendary, or even new type. There are already plenty of great videos and posts on this out there, but not so much on the region itself and the world building. So that's what I'll be focusing on. And even with just that, I got plenty of things to yap about. So let's get into it. Now, first of all, what's a good way to refer to this region? I keep hearing people say it's based on Southeast Asia. The thing is, when people hear Southeast Asia, they would usually think of Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, that one with the Angkor Wat. Those would be the more hyped up countries. And yet when you match it to this map, they're not really there. Now of course they can still put in elements from the surrounding countries, like they did in the previous gens, but we don't really say like Kalos is based on Europe, right? And yes, I know that this map is an early beta concept, so they could still always change it around, or they could always come in a DLC. But if we do end up with something like this, then what is it based on? Because of course, it's not just Indonesia. This is more of a Baldia situation where it's Spain and its surrounding countries. Fortunately, there is a convenient term for that. Now, if only there's such a term for this region. Well, there are these options, but each of them come with their own flaws. So well, as a local, let me propose a term that I personally feel is more fitting. Let me introduce you to the term Nusantara. This is the native name for this region, meaning islands in between, or middle islands if you will. It's derived from, again, Old Javanese, because it was coined by an ancient Javanese kingdom, Mojopahit, to refer to all the areas within their realm of influence. And while their historic borders might not be a perfect match, if you equate that to the modern country borders, it does include Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Timor, even southern Thailand and southern Philippines, so we might get them after all. And while it is heavily associated with Indonesia and it's gonna be the name of that new capital, this term has generally been adopted by all these other countries, and everyone from here would understand what you're referring to. Because it's not necessarily a political term, but also referring to a cultural sphere. Because during this kingdom's period is when many of these iconic Javanese cultural elements spread around this area, and even became symbolic of these other countries as well. So maybe we can expect to see these elements in the game, or maybe even Pokemon based on them. Also, this script I mentioned earlier got regional evolution into all these different ones. I did say it looks like this ornament, but people also mentioned that the gimmick symbol and this logos is reminiscent of this script too, and honestly, I can see that. So yeah, as you can see, this should perfectly cover all of this region.
Hold it!
Wait, what? What about Australia? The very northern tip of it is in this map. What does it have to do with any of this? Well, what if I tell you it does? Because guess what? There is evidence of long-lasting contact between the indigenous people here and the people of Nusantara, specifically the Makassar people who were trading sea cucumbers with them. So if you find Yukumuku here, you know what that's about. And that's how, in a broader sense, it can be part of this sphere of influence. Like how Russia is part of Sino. And that's why I think this term best describes this region. I mean, I won't stop people from still using all these other terms, but if you want to sound more informed, you're free to use this as well. And if I have to speculate a name for this region, I would base it on this too. Like, what about this? Yeah? Am I cooking? Anyways, another thing about this region is that it's huge. At least in terms of real-world inspiration, this is the biggest one they ever used. In fact, every single previous Pokemon region's inspirations can fit within this one. Now of course, Pokemon region size doesn't necessarily correspond to their real-world counterpart. I mean, Unova is just a city the size of the small Indonesian islands. Like, they could be traded for each other, which did happen. So that's your Unova reference for this gen. So yeah, I'm not saying that this is going to be reflected in the in-game region size. Is the main island really going to be as big as Paldea? Who knows? I mean, as long as they can fill it with enough interesting stuff. And they should have enough to fill it with. Because the reason I brought up this size is when you have inspiration source this big, it should mean one thing. Of course, this region will have diversity. After all, it's a region of diverse. Jokes aside, the thing with diversity is these days, it's more associated with like different countries and immigration. And in that sense, of course this region will be diverse. It has all these different countries, as well as these others that influenced them. And I'm sure they could reference all of this. But what I don't hear much about is how just Indonesia in itself is insanely diverse. There's a reason that our motto is unity in diversity, despite the fact that we're 90% just Indonesian. Because diversity is never about political country borders. Same culture can be different countries, while same country can have different cultures. And Indonesia has many of these different cultures. While yes, on the surface, we might all look the same and that's entirely our fault because we kind of suck at expressing our individual cultures, which is why I would like to bring light to them in this video. Now of course, I don't expect Pokemon to represent all thousands of these cultures, but if they can just take a couple major inspirations from each of these islands to create a distinct identity and vibe for their in-game counterparts, I think it would just be a great world building. Not for some cultural accuracy or whatever, but for the genuine sense of exploration, discovering new places and cultures for the players. And we do know that making these islands distinct and unique really was a key point during this game's development. So I just hope it's not just about biodiversity, biome and Pokemon, which I'm sure we'll get plenty of, but also cultures surrounding and connected to them. Now, if I ask you to picture Indonesian culture, you would probably think of something like this. And we already see hints of that in the trailer. And of course, this is the most popular representative image of the country. But it's also just like 1/10 of it. And Pokemon did come for a big promo tour here last year, so I'm sure they've got some research done. But have a look at the cities they focused on, and we're seeing a pattern here. Yeah, of course, that's because you said that Java was a big empire that united the country under their culture, right? Well, yeah, but the thing is, they didn't really go around replacing people's cultures to civilize them, because it worked more like a circle of influence, where they can adopt some elements, but all these places are free to do their own thing and keep their original identity, culture, and language. That's why we're not all speaking Japanese here. So I just hope it's not another situation where it's just one central civilization and all these islands are just wilderness for them or us to conquer. We already have a game like that. Because we have yet to see any other cities in the league outside of the capital and the resort, and they seem to focus more on untouched nature, survival, natural disasters, and ruins. It's like this region is too dangerous for long-term civilization. And you know what? We do love untouched nature, ruins, and we do have many of that here. As well as, yes, natural disasters. But let's not forget that we also have living, surviving peoples and cultures that are adapted and shaped by it. Now, Pokemon did say they want to be cautious with indigenous culture, which is respectable. But if that means they just won't have it at all, then that could be more problematic. Especially if they want to use this island. Because if they're gonna present this as an empty wilderness free for us to put our research labs and this generic Java Bali vibe, let's just say that's not gonna look good at all. And we're not just talking about obscure secret tribes hidden in the jungles. These are major ethnic groups and cultures who define these islands. Some of them even hold big power and influence in all of Indonesia. Ignoring them would be like making the game based on Japan but not have Japanese cultures in it, which I mean, the first few gens basically. Another idea I see floating around is to use all these other islands to represent the other Southeast Asian countries. Indonesia is already well represented, right? Let's move on to the next country. Disney did that with Raya, and I don't know, what do you think? Personally, I feel if it's not done carefully, it's giving that thing where you mix together all similar cultures because who cares about the distinction of the individual ones? Like, are we cool with that now or... Like, I get it. Southeast Asia is so underrepresented as a whole, and there are countries here that people still don't know much about. But there are also regional groups that can be as big and distinct as a country, and they can just be downright invisible because people think one country is one culture. It's easier to think of like Thai food, Laotian, Filipino, Indonesian food. Maybe you have tried nasi goreng, satay, or maybe rendang. But have you heard about Sulawesi food? Because see, you're missing out. That's why this regional recognition has been pushed by other similarly sized and diverse countries. And of course, if a Pokemon region was based on them, I would expect the same level of representation too. And if the region's really going to be this close to the real-world map, this is the best chance of exposure they would ever get. All I'm saying is, if we really want a Southeast Asia region, please just use this instead. Like, do we really want to confuse people even further about us? But if we do end up with this, then why don't we explore what's in these actual islands for real? So what's here? There's even this misconception that we don't really have a native identity, and it's just all these different foreign influences that came throughout our history. What people often miss is that before all of this, there are already native Austronesian cultures and even prehistoric ones that still survive and even thrive and continue to influence every single stage of this history. So that's what I want to focus on, and I hope will be reflected in the design of this region. I mean, if they at the very least reference each of this historical stage, I guess that would be good enough. But since we're here, might as well dig deeper. Let's finally explore each of these islands and highlight just some interesting stuffs they might take as an inspiration. Starting from Sumatra, it's probably most well known for this giant stinky flower. You know about it, Pokemon know about it, this province made it their whole personality. But do you know there's also this other even bigger and stinkier flower? And this one is only found exclusively in Sumatra. And we don't have a Pokemon based on it yet. So if we're not gonna have it here, then I don't know what are we even doing here. Sumatra also has the world's largest volcanic lake, created by the largest volcanic eruption in human history. But I guess that doesn't matter because it doesn't seem like we're gonna have it here. Regardless, lake or not, this area is also home to a group of people called the Batak. They have their own writing, flag, this cool shawl, they're very Christian and very successful as lawyers mainly. But most importantly for us, look at how freaking cool their houses are. Now tell me if this isn't giving high fantasy like Monster Hunter. Because you know what? They did actually used it. Or maybe you want something bigger, spikier. Well, then just come down to West Sumatra. Because here, the Minangkabau people are stacking it up and made it a whole palace. Now, why does this remind me of that place in the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV? Like, isn't this supposed to be Mesoamerica? But just compare the two, it's clearly inspired. Maybe it has to do with the theory that Austronesians were actually the first ones to make contact with the Americas. But anyways, you see now why I make this video. It's not that I want to demand cultural accuracy from a video game, but these are just objectively sick designs that are already used by numerous fantasy worlds, and no one's clocking that it's based on something that exists in real life in this island. So if Pokemon's gonna have this actual island in the game and not have this, then all I'm saying is, what a wasted potential. Anyways, back to the Minangkabau people. They have this iconic headdress, which again is giving high fantasy. They are very Muslim, but also matriarchal. Also, Indonesia's most popular trans celebrities from here, I'm just saying. But what they're most known for is of course the food. Rendang, the best food in the world according to CNN, is from here. And that's why you can find their restaurants all over Indonesia with their iconic roof and this iconic way of serving. There are also these more modern structures based on them if Pokemon wants to lean more that direction. And that's just two cultures from Sumatra. There are still these other ones. Shout out to these people casually inventing parkour, by the way. But hey, this is just the first island. And let me remind you guys, Sumatra alone is bigger than the entirety of Japan and the United Kingdom. Kingdoms also rise and fall here. Are we really gonna treat this like some throwaway deserted island? Granted, these days people know it more from all the natural disasters, some of it caused by humans' own destructive exploitation. So if this desert is actually a reference to that, then props to Pokemon. That would actually be a very strong message, connecting to the theme of nature versus development, which is said to be the central conflict in this game. Or maybe it's a desert because deserts are cool and we need a desert biome. Now, does Indonesia have deserts anyways? Yes, we do. Not to this scale though. It's mainly volcanic deserts or smaller coastal sandbanks, and some are caused by mining activities. But hey, sandboarding is a thing that we do here, so that's a great option to add to that travel gimmick. Although, none of this is actually in Sumatra. So which part of Sumatra is actually replaced by this desert? Oh, it's the Malays. Is this because they're Muslim, so might as well go full Arab on them? But yes, the Malays are also a native part of Sumatra, not just Malaysia. And in fact, Sumatra and Malaysia share the same kingdoms for most of their history. But it's a desert now, so might as well let's move on there next. The Malay Peninsula is obviously not part of Indonesia. It consists of 3 countries, Malaysia, Singapore, and just the southern part of Thailand. Obviously, they are all also very diverse and vibrant countries, but again, how much of it can be represented in this section of the region? But according to the leak, this will be the leak area, kind of like how Sinnoh is in Russia, so it would be quite major. Obviously, there are many great iconic structures here that would be perfect as the leak building, so feel free to comment which one you would prefer to be used. But again, I hope you're not skipping on the local cultures that are often overlooked when talking about these countries. So I don't know, if you're a Malaysian, would you prefer to be represented by this or by this? But I guess it's not my place to decide. So let's just move on to the next island. Borneo is also split into 3 countries, Brunei, Malaysia, but most of it is Indonesia under the name Kalimantan. Although we won't know which one is which, because as you can see, this is the island that's the most deformed from its remote counterpart. Interestingly, this is where they put the biggest main volcano, because if you compare it to the real world, it's actually the island without an active volcano. But sure, they say it's a main starting island, so maybe they want to punch you straight away with all the iconic elements, volcano, rice fields, this Bali tropical resort. But again, I hope you're not forgetting the actual, real Borneo culture. So in real life, you may know Borneo for its vast, untamed rainforest jungle, home to the orangutan and this guy. Because of this wild jungle, traditionally, kingdoms and major settlements occur on the coastlines and actually out into the waters, creating these floating villages. And of course, we saw it in the trailer, so they got it right? But you see, we're not really talking about this Maldives luxury vacation bungalow. We're talking actual lived-in villages where people do their daily lives and business and commute by boat, kind of like budget Venice. And that's where you would find these famous floating markets, which of course is very emblematic of Southeast Asia. So I just hope we can get some of that scale and liveliness in this game too. But these wild jungles are not exactly uninhabited either, because there's also a group of people native here called the Daya, and they have a very sophisticated culture too. Most notably this cool tribal design that they put everywhere, on their house, clothing, this iconic shield, and even modern buildings. They have this cool musical instrument, which is what you're listening to right now. This is the voice of the Borneo rainforest. They also have their own native spirituality with temples that looks like this. Oh, and totem poles too. So if you see something like this in the game, please don't think like it's Native American cultural appropriation. It's a thing too in these islands. Also, there's these houses. Like, I'm sorry for coming after this Final Fantasy map again, but are you sure it's not at least partially inspired? But you see what I mean. How easy it is to make a fantasy world when you have all this as your material. Now, if the speculations are correct, this should be the main island with the big resort that we see in the trailer. Now, what is this resort based on? No one's really sure about it yet. There are all the speculations, but none of it really clicks. Well, for me as an Indonesian, personally I have a hunch that it could be based on that new capital that we're building there. As you can see, it kind of has the same futuristic white-eared architecture, which calls to mind other modern styles that's been popping up in the region, especially in like Singapore. Personally, I feel that this is a style that can be seen as clashing with the natural environment. First of all, this all-white exterior is very high maintenance because it just doesn't do well in this tropical humid climate. And in this country, it was brought here by the colonizer, who of course at that time employed the locals to maintain it and keep it cool inside. So that just adds a layer of foreign imposition into this. We also traditionally don't build up in this region, probably because hot air rises. So if you were to build like multi-story castles here without AC, you're gonna suffer in the upper floors. That's why our traditional tallest structures are generally spiritual and not for living. Or it's just a very tall roof, which helps with natural ventilation. So my point is, if you compare this with older styles that has been here for centuries, you can see that one is like challenging nature, while the other is more in harmony with nature, which again connects back to the game's theme of nature versus development. And that new capital also raises such environmental concerns. Now of course I have read the leaked documents, so I might be a bit biased towards this resort, but basically from the architecture alone, people could tell that something's off. Like, what's with this design like tentacles grabbing all these islands? It reminds me of this poster by the colonizer accusing another that absolutely nobody's talking about. Yeah, I'm sure Nintendo won't talk about it either, so let's just move on to the next island. And we're getting to the big K. Galapagos? I don't know, I call it Sulawesi. Now, while working on this video, a rumor came out that this might be the island of a certain poison dragon Pokemon. But no, this is not the Komodo Island, and it's nowhere near here either. Sulawesi actually means island of iron. Oh, the irony! But regardless, as usual, I'll just discuss the real world island, and Game Freak is free to do whatever they want with it as they did all the previous islands. So what was discovered here in real life is the coelacanth. It was in a fish market. Yes, a fish that was thought to be extinct by the entire world. Apparently people here has been just casually catching it and rawly eating it. You know what else is not extinct here? Megalithic culture, like Stonehenge. These people are still building it, probably the same way we did thousands years ago. They also made these statues, which kind of looks like the Easter Island version of Proud. Oh, and also the world's oldest cave painting is also here. Are these all not important enough to get a reference, Game Freak? Anyways, one culture here who are still doing these megalithic practices is the Toraya Highlanders. And again, look at their crazy cool houses. I don't know, this is giving me like Xenoblade. So if you see something like this in the game, now you know what it's based on. The Toraya is also very well known for their very interesting funeral practices. So, ghost type area? There are also these people who make these stone sarcophaguses, so maybe we can get a rock ghost from here. These more coastal people also have these crazy tall stilt houses, which I'm sure is also an adaptation to the local nature. I just think it would be really fun to explore something like this in the game. Oh, and this roof decoration. Pokemon can totally make their own version of it. And in case you think we're not diverse enough, these people recognize 5 genders, so they're free to make these kinds of characters again in this region. They also have this very cool script that I am so obsessed with. Like, is this not the most seafaring fantasy tribe kind of script ever? Even this Australian airport is using it. So I know they won't use real world script, but maybe they can use it as a decoration, logo, symbol of any kind. Because yeah, nobody knows about this because we barely use it. Like, people probably know more about this group who decide to use Hangul instead. I guess that's more marketable. Oh, but they also have people with singular blue eye. Now that's character design material. So if you see a character with that, you know where that's from. Also, Pokemon, are you aware that triangular gate is already a thing here? Is that where you got this from? Well, maybe we can have one in this region as well then. Okay, so far we have covered 4 major islands, which might be only about half of this entire region. But unfortunately, I might have to cut it here for now, because I want to at least upload something this month. 1, before Pokemon Worlds, so in case anything got revealed there, I can address it on the second part. And 2, because it's the Independence Month of my country. So this is like a tribute to the only parts of this country that I love. Because regardless of the situation we're in right now, fiction is always a way to imagine an idealized version of our reality, and I'd rather take my escapism from actual fiction than a politician's fantasy. But yeah, I've been working on this video on and off alongside my main work and real life stuff since the trailer. I really thought I can just quickly pick out 1 or 2 things from here and there. But the more I dive into each of these islands, the more I find cool new stuff that just feels like fantasy fiction already. And if I can find all these new things with just a couple Google searches, then Pokemon's research team that are literally paid to do this, y'all should do better than me. But do I actually believe that they're gonna care enough to research and represent all these different cultures? Of course not. Like, come on, I'm a Pokéfan. I'm used to be disappointed. Once again, I did not make this video to drum up expectations too high for this game. The point of this video then is to just help familiarize people, fellow players, with this much lesser known part of the world, and I'm just happy to share my knowledge about it as someone who literally lives here. Maybe when the game comes out, you can cross-reference with this video to see if there's anything there you can recognize. So the fact that the game gave me an excuse to make this video and got you to watch it then I'd say this video has fulfilled its purpose. But if this video genuinely interests you, at least to help ease the dry spell, then stay tuned for part 2, where I'll discuss the famous Wallace Line, explore eastern Indonesia, including the Komodo Island, Bali, and of course back to Java. So that might come out probably in another couple of months. And again, this is my first time ever making a video essay like this, so sorry if it's all over the place. I'm still learning what works and what doesn't, so feel free to criticize, add things, but also comment if there's anything here you'd genuinely love to see in the game. Maybe I'll try to respond to some on the next part. Feel free also to like, share, react, repost it on TikTok or whatever. Again, I'm not a YouTuber, I don't care. What matters is you got to watch this, and for that I say thank you.